it feels like he's going back to just kind of like what they're trying to save, at least in their own mind, a little bit. Just going back
well,
to...
I personally, I kind of like the aspect of it that it has to do with, Ethan it comes back to the kind of interracial relationship thing, right? Like so many people look at him and Laurie's interested in him, but they go, oh, what, you're going to like marry like a native squalor.
Right.
And like even Ethan is like a little bit, like, oh, like so like part of this is, because so much of this movie is fueled by sexual anxiety and, sort of like miscegenation, anxiety as well. Like this idea of, people getting into interracial relationships because all of these people are, have a lot of racist attitudes. And I do think that subplot, by making it kind of like a silly romance subplot, it does actually leave you unprepared for that line that you were talking about, where like, where he's like, wait, why would you stop him from killing Debbie? Like Martha would also want to shoot Debbie in the head for being like impure or like not white anymore by being kidnapped and like indoctrinated into the native tribe and like all of this, which is like, that's got to be like the most incredibly horrible,
so dark for such a subtle moment. It's so unbelievably dark for one line that they don't even linger on in any way, shape, or form.
Well, because it's one of those things where like, oh, other people actually think the same way he does. He's just a little bit more like kind of it. Like, he's just really, really
he's honest.
Open about it, because early the darkness and the tragedy is more just like kind of like the bleakness of the situation, like that really spectacular day for night scene where like Brad thinks he saw Lucy in one of the camps and he's really excited to like ride in and save her. He's like putting his boots on, and then Ethan has to like stop him and be like, actually, remember earlier when I came back from a cave and I was like out of breath and didn't have my jacket earlier, which is, he actually does really subtly build to, where you're like, what was he doing over there? He goes, yeah, I found Lucy. Don't ask me what happened to her. It's kind of implied that she was like sexually assaulted and then murdered. He was like, I actually found her corpse up there and I buried her there and, wrapped her in my jacket. And, Brad obviously has to sit there and tearfully like listen to him say that. And then in like a fit of rage, he just like bum rushes the camp basically. Yeah. And it's done in this single shot where completely off screen, we just hear him like screaming and then get shot and then get killed. Yeah. And, and they're like,
Ethan has this like, just of course kind of thing. Like, what were you thinking? It's very
and they go, so one of them's already been murdered and we've lost the other one, and they lose the trail in the winter time, which is when they briefly go back to the neighbor's farm, the Jorgensen's farm, who is his brother's neighbor. And that's when the movie structure kind of changes a little bit, because they're like, well, the disappointment of, we didn't immediately go in and rescue her. This is actually going to be a lot longer and harder of a journey than we anticipated. And it kind of turns into like this letter reading structure.
Yes.
Where they become like, like more obsessed with their increasingly like fruitless quest. And we get the episodic encounters through letters that Martin is writing to Laurie, which is involving a whole bunch of subplots. Like, at one point they accidentally buy like a native woman wife for information. One of the darkest scenes is John Wayne just like killing buffalo like a madman.
Oh yeah.
And because they're shooting one and they're just like, well, it's because we're hungry, we're gonna eat. But then he keeps shooting them, and Martin has to be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And he was just like, I'm wasting all of this meat so that like the Comanches starve. Yeah. And you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy.
It's just nonstop. Like, it's absolutely nonstop. I was gonna ask you how you felt about I found the pacing, and it still worked for me, but the pacing of the way they go back and forth between the letter reading and then just showing you the actual narrative was a little jarring for me. just because they take a lot of time in between Laurie actually reading the one letter that he sends over 5 years, which is also a very funny detail.
Right.
But,
yes.
But
yeah, they were like, you sent one letter and you didn't even sign that I love you or something. No wonder she married this fucking tool.
And to be
Charlie
honest,
or whatever, you know.
When that joke happens, this format makes it so much funnier, because I thought every time it cut back to Laurie, she was doing another letter, like another letter that Martin sent her throughout the years or whatever. And then when you find out it was just one letter,
he kind of wrote like one novella and then like put it in a mailbox and was like, there you go.
It really,
this is what I've been up to, by the way.
It's a very funny joke, and I don't know how, like, if the format was it's not the reason for the joke, obviously, but it really worked with the joke and the format. Other than the context of the joke, I just found it to be a little bit confusing with time, like how much was actually passing and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize it was actually 5 years went by the time it happened, It's not too much of a
I get
detriment,
that, but I also think that it is absolutely meant to be that, like, these guys are getting lost in the journey. Like, they don't know where the fuck they are. They don't know. Like, they're moving impulsively, like, place to place, and some of it just motivated by, like, their own, like, actual instincts. Like that one episode where they go to the place where they think that they're going to get a tip from a trading post owner, that like someone came through saying like Debbie had been taken by like a chief named Scar or something, and the scene later where Ethan has to like he kills the trading post owner because he baits him into trying to rob their camp and then takes his like bribe money back from his corpse. Like it's one of those things that like they keep finding just like grim detail to give, and like obviously that has to also come up later.